Hello friends, welcome to COVID Disease by Dr. Rahul Dandekar. Management of severe cases. Always early supportive therapy and monitoring. Give supplemental oxygen therapy immediately to patients with severe COVID and respiratory distress, hypoxia or shock. Initiate oxygen therapy at 5 liters per minute and titrate flow rates to reach target SpO2 more than 90% in non-pregnant adults and SpO2 more than 92 to 96% in pregnant patients. Children with emergency signs, obstructed or absent breathing, severe respiratory distress, central cyanosis, shock, coma, or convulsions should receive oxygen therapy during resuscitation to target SpO2 more than equal to 94%. All areas where patients with severe COVID are cared for should be equipped with pulse oximeter, finger probe, functioning oxygen systems and disposable single-use oxygen delivery interfaces, nasal cannula, simple face mask and mask with reservoir bag. Use contact precautions when handling contaminated oxygen interfaces of patients with COVID-19. Use conservative fluid management in patients with severe COVID when there is no evidence of shock. Now, management of hypoxemic respiratory failure and ARDS. Recognize severe hypoxemic respiratory failure when a patient with respiratory distress is failing standard oxygen therapy. Patients may continue to have increasing work of breathing or hypoxemia even when oxygen is delivered via a face mask with reservoir bag, flow rates of 10 to 15 liters per minute, which is typically the minimum flow required to maintain bag inflation, FiO2 0.60 to 0.95. Hypoxemic respiratory failure in ARDS commonly results from intrapulmonary ventilation perfusion mismatch or shunt and usually requires mechanical ventilation. High flow nasal cannula oxygenation HFNO, high flow nasal cannula oxygenation or non-invasive mechanical ventilation. When respiratory distress and hypoxemia of patient cannot be alleviated after receiving standard oxygen therapy, high flow nasal cannula oxygen therapy or non-invasive ventilation can be considered. Compared to standard oxygen therapy, HFNO reduces the need for intubation. Patients with hypercapnia or exacerbation of obstructive lung disease, cardiogenic pulmonary edema, hemodynamic instability, multi-organ failure, or abnormal mental status should generally not require HFNO, although emerging data suggests that HFNO may be safe in patients with mild, moderate, and non-worsening hypercapnia. Patients receiving HFNO should be in a monitoring setting and cared for by experienced personnel capable of endotracheal intubation in case the patient acutely deteriorates or does not improve after a short trial, about 1 hour. There have been concerns raised about generation of aerosols while using HFNO and NIV. However, recent publications suggest that newer HFNO and NIV systems with good interface fitting do not create widespread dispersion of exhaled air and therefore should be associated with low risk of airborne transmission. If conditions do not improve or even get worse within a short time, 1 to 2 hours, tracheal intubation and invasive mechanical ventilation should be used in a timely manner. Endotracheal intubation should be performed by a trained and experienced provider using airborne precautions. Patients with ARDS, especially young children or those who are obese or pregnant, may desaturate quickly during intubation. pre-oxygenate with 100% FiO2 for 5 minutes or via a face mask with reservoir bag valve mask, HFNO or NIV. Rapid sequence intubation is appropriate for an airway assessment that identifies no signs of difficult intubation. Implement mechanical ventilation using lower tidal volumes 4 to 8 ml per kilogram predicted body weight PBW and lower inspiratory pressure plateau pressure less than 30 centimeter of water. This is a strong recommendation from a clinical guideline for patients with ARDS and is suggested for patients with sepsis-induced respiratory failure. The initial tidal volume is 6 ml per kilogram PBW. Tidal volume up to 8 ml per kilogram PBW is allowed if undesirable side effect occurs. For example, dysynchrony, pH less than 7.15. Hypercapnia is permitted if meeting the pH goal of 7.30 to 7.45. Ventilator protocols are available. The use of deep sedation may be required to control respiratory drive and achieve tidal volume targets. Patients with severe ARDS, prone ventilation for 16 to 18 hours per day is recommended but requires sufficient human resources and expertise to be performed safely. Refer to Annexure 1. In patients with moderate to severe ARDS, high PEEP instead of lower PEEP is suggested. PEEP titration requires consideration of benefits, reducing atelectatic trauma and improving alveolar recruitment versus risks and inspiratory overdistension leading to lung injury and higher pulmonary vascular resistance. Tables are available to guide PEEP titration based on the FiO2 required to maintain SpO2. In patients with moderate severe ARDS, PaO2 FiO2 ratio less than 150. Neuromuscular blockade by continuous infusions should not be routinely used. In settings with access to expertise in extracorporeal life support (ECLS), consider referral of patient with refractory hypoxemia despite lung protective ventilation. ECLS should only be offered in expert centers with a sufficient case volume to maintain expertise and that can apply the IPC measures required for COVID-19 patients. Avoid disconnecting the patients from the ventilator, which results in loss of PEEP and atelectasis. Use in-line catheters for airway suctioning and clamp endotracheal tube. One disconnection is required. For example, transfer to a transport ventilator. Now we will see management of septic shock. Recognize septic shock in adults when infection is suspected or confirmed, and vasopressors are needed to maintain mean arterial pressure MAP more than equal to 65 mm of mercury and lactate is more than 2 millimole per liter in absence of hypovolemia. Recognize septic shock in children with any hypotension, systolic blood pressure SBP less than 5th percentile or more than 2 standard deviation below normal for age, or 2 of 3 of the following: altered mental state, tachycardia or bradycardia. HR less than 90 beats per minute or more than 160 beats per minute in infants, and heart rate less than 70 beats per minute or more than 150 beats per minute in children. Prolonged capillary filling more than 2 seconds, or warm vasodilation with bounding pulses, tachypnea, mottled skin, or petechial or porphyric rash, increased lactate, oliguria, hypothermia, or hypothermia. In the absence of a lactate management, use MAP and clinical signs of perfusion to define shock. Standard care includes early recognition and following treatments within 1 hour of recognition. Antimicrobial therapy and fluid loading and vasopressors for hypotension. The use of central venous and arterial catheters should be based on resources availability and individual patient needs. In resuscitation after septic shock in adults, give at least 30 ml per kilogram of isotonic crystalloid in adults in the first 3 hours. In resuscitation from septic shock in children in well-resourced settings, give 20 ml per kilogram as a rapid bolus and up to 40 to 60 ml per kilogram in the first 1 hour. Do not use hypotonic crystalloids, starches or gelatins for resuscitation. Fluid resuscitation may lead to volume overload, including respiratory failure. If there is no response to fluid loading and signs of volume overload appear, for example, jugular venous distension, crackles on lung auscultation, pulmonary edema on imaging, or hepatomegaly in children, then reduce or discontinue fluid administration. This step is particularly important when mechanical ventilation is not available. Alternate fluid regimen are suggested when caring for children in a resource-limited setting. Crystalloids include normal saline and Ringer's lactate, NS and RL. Determine need for additional fluid boluses 250 to 1000 ml in adults or 10 to 20 ml per kilogram in children, based on clinical response and improvement of perfusion targets. Perfusion targets include MAP more than 65 mm of mercury as are age appropriate targets in children. Urine output more than 0.5 ml per kilogram per hour in adults, 1 ml per kilogram per hour in children, and improvement of skin mottling, capillary refill, level of consciousness and lactate. Consider dynamic indices of volume responsiveness to guide volume administration beyond initial resuscitation based on local resources and experience. These indices include massive leg raising test, fluid challenges with serial stroke volume measurements, or variations in systolic pressure, pulse pressure, inferior vena cava size, or stroke volume in response to changes in intrathoracic pressure during mechanical ventilation. Administer vasopressors when shock persists during or after fluid resuscitation. The initial blood pressure target is MAP more than equal to 65 mm of mercury in adults and age appropriate targets in children. If central venous catheters are not available, vasopressors can be given through a peripheral IV, but use a large vein and closely monitor for signs of extravasation and local tissue necrosis. If extravasation occurs, stop infusion. Okay. Vasopressors can also be administered through intraosseous needles. If signs of poor perfusion and cardiac dysfunction persist despite achieving MAP target with fluids and vasopressors, consider an inotropic such as dobutamine. Okay guys, see now other therapeutic measures. For patients with progressive deterioration of oxygen indicators, rapid worsening on imaging, and excessive activation of body's inflammatory response, glucocorticoids can be used for a short period of time, 3 to 5 days. It is recommended that dose should not be exceed the equivalent of methylprednisolone 1 to 2 mg per kilogram per day or dexamethasone 0.2 to 0.4 mg per kilogram per day. Note that a larger dose of glucocorticoid will delay the removal of coronavirus due to immunosuppressive effect. Prophylactic use of UFH or LMWH, for example, enoxaparin 40 mg per day subcutaneous, should be given for anticoagulation. Control of comorbid conditions should be ensured. For pregnant severe cases, consultations with obstetric, neonatal, and intensive care specialist, depending on the condition of mother, are essential. Patients often suffer from anxiety and fear, and they should be supported by psychological counseling. Note: an algorithm for clinical guidance for management of COVID-19 suspect or confirmed case placed in Annex 2. Now, investigational therapies. Investigational therapies. Okay. At present, use of these therapies is based on limited available evidence. As the situation evolves and when more data become available, the evidence will be accordingly incorporated and recommendation upgraded. Further, use of these drugs is subjected to limited availability in the country as of now. Currently, these drugs should only be used in a defined subgroup of patients. Drug 1, Remdesivir, under emergency use authorization, may be considered in patients with moderate disease, those on oxygen, with none of the following contraindication. AST-ALT ratio is more than 5 times upper limit of normal. Severe renal impairment, eGFR less than 30 ml per minute per meter square, or need for hemodialysis. Pregnancy or lactating females. Children less than 12 years of age. Dose 200 mg IV on day 1, followed by 100 mg IV daily for 5 days. So usually treatment is 5 days. Whatever you start for 5 days. Now, second one, convalescent plasma off-label may be considered in patients with moderate disease who are not improving. Oxygen requirement is progressively increasing despite use of steroids. Special prerequisites while considering convalescent plasma include ABO compatibility and cross-matching of donor plasma. Neutralizing titer of donor plasma should be above the specific threshold. If the latter is not available, plasma hemoglobin G titer against S protein RBD above 1:640 should be used. Recipient should be closely monitored for several hours after post-transfusion for any transfusion-related adverse events. Use should be avoided in patients with hemoglobin A deficiency or hemoglobin allergy. Dose is variable, ranging from 4 to 13 ml per kilogram. Usually 200 ml single dose is given slowly over not less than 2 hours. Now third drug is tocilizumab, off-label, may be considered in patients with moderate disease with progressively increasing oxygen requirement and in mechanically ventilated patients not improving despite using steroids. Long-term safety data in COVID-19 remains largely unknown. Special considerations before its use include presence of raised inflammatory markers, CRP, ferritin, and interleukin-6. Patients should be carefully monitored post-tocilizumab for secondary infections and neutropenia. Active infections and tuberculosis should be ruled out before use. Dose 8 mg per kilogram, maximum 800 mg at one time. Given slowly in 100 ml NS over 1 hour. Dose can be repeated once after 12 to 24 hours if needed. Repurpose or off-label therapies. Hydroxychloroquine. This drug has demonstrated in vitro activity against SARS or COVID-2 and was shown to be clinically beneficial in several small single-center studies, though with significant limitations. Nonetheless, several large observational studies with severe methodological limitations have shown no effect on mortality or other clinically meaningful outcomes. As such, the evidence base behind its use remains limited as with other drugs and should only be used after shared decision making with the patients while awaiting the results of ongoing studies. As in the case with other antivirals, this drug should be used as early as in the disease course as possible to achieve any meaningful effects and should be avoided in patients with severe disease. An ECG should ideally be done before prescribing the drug to measure QTc interval, and QTc avoided if QTc is more than 500 milliseconds. Dose 400 mg BD on day 1 followed by 400 mg daily for next 4 days. 200 mg BD for next 4 days. Okay guys, we'll see next.